everyone. So, today we are coming to a close of the course and the concluding part of the course, and we are talking about ethics in the Indian tradition and applied ethics issues and dilemmas. So, let us just go through a brief overview of what we have covered as of now. So, these have been the various modules. So, module 1 to 4 is what we have completed till now, and these modules talk about the essential concepts, theories and problematization of ethics. Now, having been equipped with these 4 modules of understanding, basically problematizing what module 1 problematizes value theory, that to make you see where are the value troubles and how do we use valuation in the world of experience. Then we come across certain concepts: good, right, duty, justice, equality, love, purusharths, and then go on with egoism, altruism, ethical relativism and universalism. Then we come to the domain of theories. When we talk about theories, we have talked about consequentialist and non-consequentialist theories. We have talked about hedonism, utilitarianism, deontological ethics and ethical rules, situation ethics, virtue ethics. Now, having done all this, let us take a step into the world. Having got this conceptual vocabulary, now you should be able to look at the world, look at a moral problem in the world or look at any problem in the world out there and unearth its moral assumptions. So, how do you describe it in terms of moral concepts and how do you make an argument thereof? So, both to understand and argue, the 5th module comes the deliverables of the course. So, here is where applied ethics, which is also very interesting because it is connected to our day to day lives, and yet it is also deeply theoretical because it now starts encompassing what are the theoretical assumptions, what are the concepts that we can apply from our learning in moral philosophy, right. Then there is also we leave a parting note of on ethics in the Indian tradition. So, where we talk about how ethics has happened in the Indian tradition. Most of what we have learned till now is how ethics has been formulated in the Western tradition. So, paying an ode to our own tradition. So, if we look at what the Indian tradition has talked about, and that is quite an exhaustive topic. I will try to bring a comprehensive rendition of it, so that you can have some awareness of how is Indian tradition, how has ethics been done in Indian tradition. So, to preserve the continuity between what we have done in the first 4 modules, I will take this applied ethics issues and dilemmas in the first part and ethics in the Indian tradition as the second part, because you are fresh out of your exposure to moral theories and concepts. So, let us apply them to looking at applied ethics and what are the issues and dilemmas that come across there. Well, to start with, what is applied ethics? Well, if you look at the word applications, applications are there of technology, applications are there of science. Technology is frequently referred as the application of science. So, when we look at application, it is looking at a core theory or a core concept or a core knowledge body and its implementation in the world out there, in the world of experience, in the world where we live in, right. So, ethics also as a theoretical enterprise also has an application to it, and that application is called applied ethics. Now, in applied ethics we have issues and dilemmas, and how do we think about it? So, how do we employ our moral conceptual vocabulary to think about issues and dilemmas that we come across in applied ethics? So, let us start with, I have listed out a few issues, and let us start with a discussion of this. I am sure you can come up with many more issues, and that is what is the objective of the course, that you are able to identify moral problems, you are able to identify moral layers in regular problems. So, wherever you identify a value problem, you have the conceptual vocabulary to A, identify it, B, to think about it, and C, to make a claim about it. So, this is what is the takeaway of the course that you should be able to imbibe from this rather short course, but to have some familiarity with how do you understand or articulate in terms of moral vocabulary. Now, let us look at the first one, autonomous vehicles or driverless cars. Now, in autonomous vehicles, right, Well, we've all been and especially if you are a student or you are a technology enthusiast, you would be aware that a lot of companies and labs throughout the world are working on this notion of the driverless car, and probably it's an idea from science fiction which is almost on the verge of being true, right? Now, there are a lot, there goes in a lot of technology about in putting out driverless cars, and that technology is almost we are reaching the boundary of it where it can be ready to be released into the world out there, right. But having the technology for driverless cars is a significant advancement, but nevertheless it is not the complete requirement to put these driverless cars or autonomous vehicles or AI driven vehicles on the road. What are the other problems? Now, let us imagine sometime in the future one of the nation states will be the first one to delve the issue of autonomous vehicles and give them a permit to drive on roads. Probably first they may have a few set of limited roads open to driverless cars, and then gradually see how they interact more, enhance more roads, then let them allow them to to be on roads with cars with human drivers. So, every parliament or every government or every institution will devise its own ways for the implementation of this. But prior to that implementation, there will be a debate that will take place. There is a debate that is already taking place that there is a debate that is already taking place that can we allow autonomous cars on roads, and what is the problem with that? There are many problems, or there are many problems that need to be resolved, and let us look at a few things from the notion of moral philosophy, right. So, the crucial question that you will have to make sense here is that of responsibility. Now, if we find that a driverless car is put on the road, who will be held responsible for it, right? The notion of responsibility or moral responsibility. When we look at this, whom do we look at? Who will be the one who will be responsible in case something goes wrong? In the case of a driverless car, in case of a human driven car, we have the human being who is on the driver's seat, who can be held responsible for anything that goes on with the car, at least with the driving bit of it. If not, then we can also go to the manufacturer. So, I will put it out as two levels of problems that we come across, right. One will be an autonomous driver, and one will be with a general problem with AI, right. So, one is autonomy and the other is with AI. Now, with the autonomous driver, we will find that we can come across that the autonomous driver does not have not being a human, cannot be given responsibility for an error, or what can be given responsibility. The natural urge for us to locate responsibility in human beings is what is now being upset, right. So, for an autonomous car, if a crash occurs, who can be blamed? Now, this can be one of it can be that the designers of the car can be blamed, who are again human beings. But here comes the second problem, that if when we look at artificial intelligence, which has the capability to self learn, self correct and absorb information from the environment and make changes and decisions to its own programming, in that case even the human programmer to a program that drives a car may not be held responsible, may not be even aware of the changes that the AI brings about to the programming of the car. So, here what I clearly see is a debate about the notion of moral responsibility, that who would be given responsibility for the way the car is driven. So, this is going to be one issue that comes around with the autonomous vehicles plying on the road. They may have reached a level of technology that enables them to be put on roads with human driven cars, but there is a social and political debate that has to take place before sanctioning it to be so, and here is a notion where these value problems do surface. So, now let us come to the we look at the question of autonomous vehicles and see what are the problems of implementation or the value problems that occur with the implementation of autonomous vehicles or driverless cars. Now, let us come to another sort of a thought experiment, but also which can be equated with many day realities, and I call it the hedon chair. Now, what is the hedon chair about? The hedon chair is the hedon chair, as you might guess, is a chair that comes about from the word hedonism, right. So, if we look at hedonism, and we can assume that, let us say, a chair comes into being, a hedon chair, let us call it, which can be plugged into your nervous system, and it continuously is able to give you pleasurable sensations. So, the whole fact that we have pleasurable, we desire pleasurable sensations, and if this hedon chair is plugged in and gives us pleasurable sensations, should one be seated on such a chair, right. Now, imagine your nutritional needs are taken care of, and you can spend a whole life sitting on the on this hedon chair and getting pleasurable senses, and your body being nourished by a nutritional pipeline, right. There are many variations of this example. If you look at a brain in the vat, if this is one example of it. Now, Matrix the movie is another example where one has the option of either being plugged into the matrix or being free. So, it has very often been contrasted with being free. There are numerous examples. There are, if you look at drugs, recreational drugs, and we can and here also asks is the question, lies embedded the question that what is wrong with drugs? Why should drugs be prohibited? That seems like an obvious claim, but when we question it, why prohibit it, right? So, when we look at these questions, now these all are variations of the hedon chair example. So, if we are able to get pleasurable sensations being plugged into a machine or from biochemical support, then should we or should we not go for it? Should the government endorse it or not endorse it? Painkillers in that matter are medicines that take away pain and suffering. They are legal because they are of medical use. So, let us just look at it from a moral point of view, that how would we look at the hedon chair. Now, what are the issues over here in the hedon chair? The hedon chair will have first the issues of reality. That means, if we are plugged into a system and we have pleasurable sensations, somewhere we feel that is not a sense of that is not being a part of reality, rather it is being a part of a simulation, right. So, reality versus simulation, and this again gets us to the further question of video games or online gaming, or the whole notion of gaming, virtual world. Now, the virtual world enables us to look at to experience, and the more immersive a virtual world is, we can get an experience of the kind of experiences that we want without the risks that come with that experience in the real world. Suppose I am fond of mountaineering, and now I go into a mountaineering, I go trying to climb a mountain, and I also take the risks that come with climbing the mountain, right. But when I do it, say, in an immersive virtual simulation, I can experience it as if it is real, but yet not put myself in any jeopardy, right. So, if that is the situation, should we look at it as a boon, or shall we find something troublesome or objectionable with it? Now, many philosophers have argued that, well, the hedon chair or any of these that you see on the left are not a desirable sense, because they look at redefining the notion, or actually clarifying the notion of happiness or fulfillment in life. And happiness and fulfillment is not something that stands alone as a brain state that can be replicated by a neural implant or a chemical drug, rather as a holistic state that comes into being from taking the risks, taking the journey, taking the difficult journey towards that state of happiness. So, if I sit in a excellent stimulation, say a metaverse, where I am absolutely not absolutely engrossed and have a completely immersive experience of climbing the mountain, and feel the sense of conquest when I reach the summit, and yet when I unplug, I find that it was a good experience, right. It was like a movie that I watched, totally immersive, and yet there is something which is different from the real world that I inhabit. In the real world, I take the risks. So, risks as being essential to the fulfillment experience. So, this is one strain of analyzing it. So, what is wrong with drugs? Drugs, and in certain parts of the country, marijuana is legal as a recreational drug, and there are debates that go along like this. When we look at, if you can have you see the classical adage of no pain no gain, that seems to be corrected over here when it says there can be gain without any pain. So, if we look at there is gain without any pain, what is the harm in it? Let us indulge in it. So, certain level, the virtual worlds, movies, drugs, the matrix kind of implant, brain in a vat, these are all examples where we can bypass the no pain no gain principle and have gain without the consequences of the, or the risks of suffering or pain that ensue with it. So, the hedon chair or any pleasure mechanism, there is one thing to research to find a recreational drug that reaches it, but there is another thing to see whether it is fitting with the human condition, whether it is morally viable, whether does it do something, it gives us a sensation of pleasure in the short run, but does it do so in the long run also. That is where the value debate ensues in it. So, a reason why drugs are prohibited, well, let us say if they harm your physical body, but let us imagine if a recreational drug comes is found or is designed which does not harm your body, which in fact provides you nutrition. So, if that is the case, would you think that such a drug should be legalized, should be made available, or there is something wrong with it? Now, to look at it on the value denominator is to look at it what is the notion of agency, whether agency requires risks or agency can be virtual and we can bypass risks. The whole notion of a conquest or a achievement comes, the whole notion of a conquest or achievement comes from the risks that we take in and around it. So, these are the variations of the hedon chair examples, and by putting this as an example of applied ethics, what I want you to think over is that not take a clear stand right away on the basis of what I say. These are much more complicated issues, and this is just an introduction to you, so that you can take a look at and think, spot applied ethical issues in the world around you and beginning to have a position or make an argument on it. Now, let us look at another issue, and this issue is taxes. Do the rich owe anything to the poor? That is a question that we need to now answer. Do the rich owe anything to the poor? Now, let us look at this taxes. If you thought the taxes was just a financial or economic matter, well, definitely that is not the case, because the implementation of it may be a numerical matter or a financial matter, but on what basis do we decide how much is to be taxed, what is to be taxed, how much, right. So, the percentage of taxation, and this comes with the fundamental question, do the rich owe something to the poor? Now, if your answer to this is yes, and yes a lot, then you would argue for a higher rate of taxation. I understand that taxations are also used to maintain social and infrastructure and fund the defense and police forces, but in addition to that, the taxes, a significant portions of taxes go into welfare activities, which is subsidizing the lesser affluent parts of society from contributions, in fact forced contributions from the more affluent portions of society. Now, there are, I would say, look at it in 3 steps. No taxes, meaning that, well, if the infrastructure is taken care of, there is no, the rich do not owe anything to the poor, and therefore, there is no need for them to have any tax component, the rich to subsidize the poor. On the other hand, if one argues that, well, if the rich is if the rich are owe a lot to the poor, then the taxation rates are higher, and the truth or the practice throughout the world everywhere is anywhere between these 2 extremes. So, how much do we pay to how much do the rich or we, the society, owe to the lesser affluent will determine on what is the rate of taxation. So, if you look at the rates of taxation across the world, you would get an idea about what kind of philosophy that particular country follows, and that again comes from what kind of value debate has taken place in its parliament, in its constitution, and its ethos of governance. So, taxes are again an example that do the rich owe anything to the poor, and one way of looking at it is yes, another way is no, and the bulk of the way is between yes, but to what extent. In fact, there have been philosophers like Robert Nozick who have argued taxation as slave labor. And how do they justify this taxation as slave labor? Because if you work for, if you pay 20% taxes, you work for 100 days. So, your salary or your income is for 80 days, the rest 20 days salary or income you give it as a part of the taxes. So, actually you have worked 80 days for yourself, and the other 20 days you have worked as a slave labor to pay taxes. This is an interesting rendition of taxation, and I think I share it so that it can provoke you to think in another perspective, another less taken perspective, a hard right perspective that talks about taxation as something as unfair and slave labor to the ones who are paying taxes, especially higher rates of taxation. So, do the rich owe something to the poor is a question to be decided in the parliament, to be decided by the nation state, and once that is decided, how much do we owe or how much does the society owe, then we go around and modify our the details of the system. So, the question here is the foundational questions are answered by the value positions taken, and thereafter how to implement those value positions into the debate is what takes place by takes place by the details of the policy. So, the taxation policy. Now, let us come to another issue. Let us say the issue of capital punishment. Now, capital punishment, right, is life sentencing. Life is our foundational fundamental resource that we have. Now, if we look at life itself, and if the can the state take away our life for whatever crime we may have done? So, capital punishment believes that yes, the state in the interest of justice has the power to take away one's life. Whether capital punishment should be a form of punishment or it should be banned as a form of punishment. If you look at countries throughout the world, many nation states have done away with capital punishments, many states have continued to keep capital punishment, but the value question beneath it is that what can we think as the questions that we have beneath it here is that can people improve? Can people be forgiven? And how much can one be punished for one's violations? Is life imprisonment a better option? Can a state that gives life cannot give life, does it have the right to take life? So, there are various, and this is a widely debated issue, I am sure you must have heard of it. So, there are variations of this issue also that makes a lot of deep and profound debate. So, look at an example which I can think of right now is, imagine a criminal who is convicted of his crime or her crime, and thereafter she or he genuinely loses her memory. She or he no more remembers the crime or the precedences, right, has had some brain anomaly and has forgotten the entire issue, has forgotten his or her entire life, suffers from a form of amnesia. Can that person, that physical person, still be held responsible for that crime? Can the person still be punished, right? The plea from insanity, which is very often cited in cases of people turning insane. So, now the answer to this, if intuitively or instinctively, maybe yes, no, somebody has there is a crime been done and somebody has been convicted. So, irrespective of their memory, they have forgotten. But imagine from the perspective of that person, that person is no more cognizant of the crime that has been done, has completely lost memory and will find oneself incarcerated or punished for no reason that he can know of. So, memory as a sense of agency, how important is memory to this sense of agency. So, there are various layers to this question, and you can I am just throwing around a few layers that you can think of, and I am sure you can add many more, and if you read around there will be much more to that. Now, let us go to another question, that do grown children owe anything to their parents? Now, that seems to be again a question that is can be answered obviously in the affirmative, that of course, children owe something to their parents. Now, the counter view to this, and these questions matter because even our legislatures and parliaments world over debate whether parents are entitled to a support, financial or otherwise, from children. India itself has had made laws regarding this. So, one argument, one strain, there is an interesting paper of the same name, and if you look around, maybe I will put it up in the reference, you can take a look at it. One strain of argument less taken, but interesting to spread the debate, is that, well, children were neither asked to be born, and therefore, for parents, children are not investments that should yield return. So, it is good that parents look after that children look after their parents and they do something for their parents, but it is not obligatory. This is one line of argument. If this is the argument that is to be held, then legally also or morally, we cannot expect children to support their grown children to support their parents as something which is mandatory. This sounds very counterintuitive, but hear it through as an alternative judgment or an alternative line of reasoning. Then let us come to this question of, what do citizens owe to the nation? Immigration and emigration. Now, we are all born in a particular country, we have a citizenship that we have, a citizenship that is not chosen. Now, if it is not chosen, then are we required to be loyal to it? So, does that, if it is not chosen, do we have any sense of loyalty to it, or should we have any sense of loyalty to it? So, some people who emigrate from one nation to the other, should that be seen in a moral compass? There are nations which welcome immigrants at a cost. So, if you make a deposit into their banking systems or into their national systems, you are welcomed with a citizenship to their country. There are countries which are strict about immigration, they do not allow people to emigrate. There are countries which are open about citizens leaving their citizenship and taking up a new citizenship. So, there is again a value component to this whole notion of citizenship, loyalty to the nation. at a very instinctive or in not even intuitive, but I would say instinctive level, one would say that one should be loyal to one's country, which is also true, but what is the reason for it and what is the reason not to validate it. So, why shouldn't or why should a country suddenly now stop emigration at all? So, should deny all its citizens to emigrate. Say North Korea does not allow immigration. If I remember correctly, China perhaps does not allow immigration, or not in a smooth fashion. So, why should we or why should a nation allow or disallow immigration? Why should a nation allow or disallow immigration? Now, these are questions of loyalty, these are questions of agency, of choices that one has not made and yet one has to be committed to it. So, I am generally giving you an alternative line of argument which gets you to think that, well, where do we which contests our intuitive or instinctive position on this, so that it spreads the debate. So, immigration is fine if one can pay duties of reparation, as Ross would have said that, well, we have consumed and our country of birth has given, or nation of birth has given us so much of support, and we can as well as compensate or pay the expenditure it has invested in us, and then feel free from the obligation to continue in the same nation. Do these things seem reasonable, unreasonable, far-fetched, or futuristic, or downright wrong? This is how you would think about this particular issue and debate. Now, let us look at another issue in applied ethics, something that may be close to many of your hearts if you have been a student or you are a student. That is the reservation policy in India, which in philosophical literature is often referred to as something called affirmative action. And this affirmative action is based on the duties of reparation. Now, the fundamental question here is, does one generation inherit the inherit the consequences of the acts of the previous generation? Please pardon my handwriting, because it is already not great, and with the screen it turns out to be even more challenging to write legibly, but I hope it is legible. So, the essential question here is, before you jump to the opinion that you have, look at what is the debate beneath it, what has been the justification about it. So, does one generation inherit the consequences of the acts of the previous generation? Now, instinctively one might say no, if one is looking at it from the reservation or affirmative action angle. But if one stops and also looks at the advantages one gets from the acts of the previous generation, say your ancestors have built a house for you, so you have, your property comes from your ancestors without your active role in that. The kind of culture that your family has set up, you inherit that culture. So, if you inherit the advantages, do you also need to inherit the disadvantages? So, and if you inherit the disadvantages, then do you need, or does the oppressed owe something to the oppressor even in the next generation? So, duties of reparation is what is invoked in affirmative action. So, does the collective owe it? Does the oppressor owe it? So, the notion of affirmative action world over, or reservation as known in India, is typically when these duties of reparation are held as something which is sacred and which needs to be settled, that each generation does not have a cycle of does not have a break even, and things are carried forward. So, when they are carried forward, there is the next generation which owes without actually being the perpetrator of the oppression. This can be seen in various societies, in Indian societies or caste based oppression, in different societies there has been race based oppression, there has been color based oppression. So, all of these oppressions to make good these oppressions or to compensate for earlier oppressions. So, this is the crucial word, oppressions across generation. Can they be forgotten? Because even the notion of oppression across phases of life. So, somebody who's may have been a cruel tyrant. Let us say the famous story that we know of the conversion of King Ashok from the Chanda Ashok to the Dharma Ashok, right? From a aggressive conqueror who spilled a lot of blood on war grounds, to a religious Ashoka, Dharma Ashok, who abhorred violence and shunned away violence. Can that Dharma Ashok be still seen, be held responsible for what he did as Chanda Ashok? Probably yes, and that is also the reason why across not just a human life, but across generations also duties or oppressions and reparations are carried over. This is one aspect of the or the lesser taken aspect of the notion of reparation. So, now let us go into another aspect of applied ethics, sexuality and morality. This is quite a crucial aspect of morality, because the fundamental question here is there anything moral about sexuality? Perhaps I will do a small interesting paper on this to further bring about this debate as an applied ethics issue, that is there anything moral about sexuality? Now, you might have an immediate answer that comes to you, because that is the position that you have been holding, but if you could just suspend that judgment and go and look at the question as a philosopher, that the notion of morality and sexuality, do they have any connection? Because if they do have connection, then a lot of regulation, a lot of moral components come in the in guiding the domain of sexuality. But if they are not, then sexuality is just like any other physical act, and it need not be governed under moral norms. So, the whole notion of the Uniform Civil Code, it looks at social relations and as and a minor part of it as sexual relations also, which should be under the ambit of civil code, and therefore under the ambit of the government and legislation, then laws of the state. Does marriage as marriage as an institutional recognition of a union of two people? Now, does that seem to be an unnecessary feature, that as long as two people agree to be together, it does not matter whether it is recognized by the people, by the society or by the state, or does it deserve to be recognized by the society and the state? How do we look at marriage and relationships, right? And this is not just the question of sexuality, it is also now to the question of relationships, whether relationships stand as between two individuals, or there is a role of social and state legal recognition for these relationships. As of now, this is a current state of affairs, but these can always be varied. So, are there instances of sexuality that are bereft of morality? Now, let us come to another topic. Now, I am just putting these out over there so that you can take a look and think over it at what sense does it make. Let us say another classic issue that comes about is freedom of speech and privacy. Now, we all have the right, or we think we have the right to express ourselves, but expressing ourselves also can be hurtful to the dignity of others, right? Privacy needs to be respected. Now, if you look at the history of an human civilization, or even a short span of history of your lived life, you would see how the notion of privacy has changed over the years. Probably 2 decades back, asking somebody of their marital status would not have been seen as a invasion of privacy, but today asking somebody, or especially a stranger asking you of your marital status, is regarded as an invasion of privacy. So, as we see, the notion of the role of privacy also changes. Freedom of speech now, that has new connotations when it comes to the notion of social media and the internet enabled media. Now, one can make a comment about anything anywhere, and there can be social media bullying, there can be trolling, there can be a lot of cyber bullying that can be seen as, at one angle, as a freedom of expression, that it is just an expression, why should it matter to the other. On the other hand, it can also be seen as an act of bullying, that as an invasion of privacy. So, when we look at freedom of speech and privacy, the balance that we strike, we need to strike between these two opposing forces will be calibrated by what kind of moral values we as a collective or as an individual hold as sacred. So, that is where the moral debate goes on, and if you look at parliamentary debates, you look at legal court pronouncements, they are all rich with this debate that takes place, with finally taking a position what they need to solve. Say another example that occurs to me about an applied ethics issue is the notion of suicide, whether suicide should be legal or criminal. Now, India has gone through an history where it was criminalized and then it was decriminalized. So, does one have the right to take one's own life? In one conceptualization, one would think that yes, one owns one's own life, and therefore one has the right to take it. On another, perhaps a more communitarian conceptualization, one could think of, well, the first conceptualization, let me call it individual, and the second one, let me call it communitarian. That means your life is neither wholly built by you nor wholly owned by you. The community has played a role in your coming into being, and the you owe the community something. So, you do not have an absolute ownership of your life. Therefore, suicide is something that should not be legal. So, there are Nordic countries which hold suicide as legal, and I am not talking about euthanasia, but I am talking about suicide not emanating from any terminal illness. So, and then there are nations which hold suicide as illegal. So, how do we look at suicide? How do we cast a judgment on suicide, whether it is to be done? So, these are some of the big questions that come about, or applied ethical questions that come out and touch our lives. Maybe I will add a few more, and 2 or 3 applied ethics questions done in detail in the subsequent videos, so that you can make sense of what it means to go ahead with an applied ethical question. So, I will stop for now. Thank you very much.